The starship Nexus Prime moved through the darkness of space like a metal mountain. Its hull gleamed with alien symbols that marked it as a coalition vessel. Inside the command center, Commander Zethkar stood before a large screen showing a small blue planet. Zethkar was tall and strong with gray skin and 4 arms. His species, the Vraxians, had conquered many worlds. His uniform was covered with medals from battles across the galaxy. Next to him stood Vexta, a Korthek warrior with thick armor and sharp teeth. Both aliens had seen more wars than they could count. "So this is Earth," Zethkar said, looking at the planet on the screen. "The humans who sent us that message." The message had been simple. Earth wanted to talk. They wanted peace. They asked for a meeting to discuss joining the galactic community. The coalition leaders had laughed. Another weak species wanting protection. "They look soft," Vexta growled. "Their cities have no walls. Their ships carry no heavy weapons. This will be easy," Zethkar nodded. The coalition had sent their best soldiers to meet humanity. The Void Reapers were the most feared military unit in known space. They had crushed rebellions on 17 worlds. They had made entire species surrender without firing a shot. The humans had asked to meet at something called Luna Station. It was a small base on Earth's moon. When the Nexus Prime arrived, Zethkar was surprised. The station was clean and modern, but it had no shields. No weapon towers. No signs of military strength at all. "They must be very confident," Vexta said, "or very stupid." A human ship came to escort them to the station. It was sleek and fast, but Zethkar could see it carried only light weapons. The pilot's voice was calm and friendly as she guided them to a docking bay. "Welcome to Luna Station," the pilot said. "I'm Captain Rodriguez. We're looking forward to meeting you." Inside the station, everything was bright and clean. Humans walked around in simple uniforms. They smiled and nodded at the alien visitors. Zethkar had expected guards with weapons. Instead, he saw scientists, engineers, and diplomats. The human delegation was waiting in a conference room. Their leader was an older woman with gray hair and kind eyes. She wore a simple blue uniform with no weapons at all. "I'm Admiral Sarah Chen," she said, extending her hand. "Welcome to our solar system." Zethkar looked at her hand, then shook it carefully. Her grip was firm but not challenging. Next to her stood a man with dark hair and a metal arm. The prosthetic was clearly military grade, but it looked like it was made for work, not war. "This is Colonel Marcus Rodriguez," Admiral Chen said. "We call him Bull." The colonel smiled and also shook hands with the aliens. His metal arm moved smoothly like it was part of his body. Zethkar noticed scars on the man's face and neck. "Old battle wounds. You've seen combat," Vexta said, pointing at the colonel's arm. "A little," Bull said with a shrug. "Lost this one in the siege of Neo Mumbai. But that was years ago." Zethkar had never heard of this battle. He made a mental note to ask about it later. The humans led them to a dining hall. The food was simple but good. During the meal, the aliens began to share stories of their victories. They expected the humans to be impressed. "The Battle of Zirion Prime was our greatest victory," Zethkar said proudly. "We faced 3 million enemy soldiers. They had better weapons and stronger positions, but we crushed them in 6 days." Admiral Chen nodded politely. "That sounds like difficult fighting." "Urban warfare is always challenging." "You know about urban warfare?" Vexta asked. "Oh yes," Bull said, cutting his food with his metal hand. "I spent 3 years in the African conflicts. Mostly city fighting. Then there was Neo Mumbai, of course. And the Amazon Basin campaign after that." Zethkar frowned. These sounded like major military operations, but the humans spoke about them like they were discussing old jobs. "How many soldiers did you command?" Vexta asked Bull. "Command?" Bull laughed. "I was just a sergeant back then. Commanded maybe 12 people on a good day. Most of the time it was just me and my rifle." The aliens exchanged glances. In their military, only the highest officers saw real combat. Regular soldiers were kept away from the dangerous fighting. "Tell us about your greatest battle," Zethkar said to Admiral Chen. The admiral thought for a moment. "I suppose that would be the Third Naval War. I was a young captain then. We fought in the Pacific Depression for 18 months. Lost a lot of good ships." "How many enemy vessels did you destroy?" Vexta asked eagerly. "I tried not to keep count," Admiral Chen said quietly. "They were human ships too. Somebody's sons and daughters died when those ships went down." The aliens were confused. In Vraxian culture, counting enemy kills was a mark of honor. "The more you killed, the more respected you became, but surely you celebrate your victories?" Zethkar asked. Bull and Admiral Chen looked at each other. Something passed between them that the aliens couldn't understand. "We remember them," Bull said finally. "But celebrating? That seems wrong somehow. Too many people died." The conversation moved to other topics. The humans asked about alien technology and culture. They were curious about how different species lived and worked together in the coalition. But whenever the aliens tried to boast about their military might, the humans just listened politely. After dinner, they toured Luna Station. The humans showed them laboratories, living quarters, and communication centers. Everything was efficient and well organized. But there were no barracks. No weapon storage areas, no signs of military preparation. "Where do you keep your soldiers?" Vexta asked. "On Earth mostly," Admiral Chen said. "Some on Mars and the outer stations. But Luna is primarily a research facility." "Research for what?" "Everything. Medicine, engineering, agriculture. We're trying to solve problems." Zethkar was getting frustrated. These humans seemed weak and unprepared, yet something about them made him uneasy. They were too calm, too confident, like they knew something he didn't. As the evening ended, the aliens prepared to return to their ship. They would spend the night analyzing what they had learned, then begin formal negotiations in the morning. "Before you go," Admiral Chen said, "may I ask about your great cleansing? You mentioned it during dinner." Zethkar puffed up with pride. "Our greatest achievement. The rebel colonies in the Outer Rim thought they could challenge Vraxian authority. We showed them otherwise. The campaign lasted 2 years and resulted in 2.3 billion casualties. No one has challenged us since." He expected the humans to be impressed. Instead, Admiral Chen just nodded thoughtfully. "0.3 billion, she repeated. "That is significant. Our Third World War had about 4.7 billion casualties before we learned better. That's why we work so hard for peace now." The conference room fell silent. Zethkar stared at the small, gray-haired woman. She had spoken about 4.7 billion deaths like she was discussing the weather. Your species killed 4.7 billion of your own people?" Vexta whispered. "Give or take," Bull said sadly. "The exact number is hard to calculate. Nuclear weapons make body counts difficult." Admiral Chen looked directly at Zethkar. "That's why we're so careful now, Commander. We know what happens when intelligent species choose war over peace. We've lived through it." As the aliens returned to their ship, they were quiet. They had come to Earth expecting to find weak creatures playing at war. Instead, they had met survivors of something terrible, something that made the Great Cleansing look small. Zethkar stood on his ship's bridge looking down at the blue planet. Somewhere down there, billions of humans lived peaceful lives. They built things instead of destroying them. They explored space to learn, not to conquer, but they had once killed nearly 5 billion of their own kind. And they spoke about it with the calm voice of experience. For the first time in his military career, Commander Zethkar wondered if he was out of his depth. The next morning, Admiral Chen offered to show the Coalition delegation Earth's military academy. Zethkar accepted eagerly. Finally, he would see how humans trained their warriors. The journey to Earth took 2 hours in a human transport ship. Zethkar noticed the pilot was just a young woman, maybe 20 years old. In Vraxian society, only experienced males were trusted with military vehicles. "How long have you been flying?" Vexta asked her. "About 3 years, she said cheerfully. "Started when I was 17. The aliens exchanged glances. This human child had been flying military craft since she was barely an adult. Earth's military academy sat in the mountains of a place called Colorado. The buildings were made of gray stone and metal. They looked strong but not fancy. Hundreds of young humans moved between the buildings in organized groups. A young officer met them at the main gate. She was small and thin with short black hair and bright eyes. Her uniform was simple and clean. "I'm Captain Lisa Park," she said. "I'll be showing you our training facilities today." Zethkar looked down at her. Captain Park was barely taller than a human child. In his military, such a small person would never be given command. "You're very young to be a captain," he said. "I'm 26, she replied. "Been in the service for 8 years. Would you like to see our simulation center first?" They followed her into a large building. Inside was a room filled with strange devices that looked like metal pods. Young humans climbed into the pods while instructors watched screens nearby. "This is where we train our officers in tactical thinking," Captain Park explained. "Each pod contains a full military simulation. The cadets face different scenarios every day." She activated one of the screens so the aliens could watch. Inside the simulation, A group of human soldiers was fighting in a destroyed city. Buildings were on fire. Streets were filled with rubble. The soldiers moved carefully from cover to cover, checking every doorway and window. "What are they fighting?" Vexta asked. "Other humans," Captain Park said simply. "The simulation is based on the Battle of Detroit from our Third Urban War. Very complicated fighting." Zethkar watched the screen with growing confusion. The enemy soldiers looked exactly like the friendly ones. Same uniforms, same weapons, same faces. How could they tell who was who? "How do your soldiers know who to shoot?" he asked. Captain Park looked surprised. "That's part of the challenge. In real war, the enemy often looks just like you. Sometimes they are your own people who chose a different side. You have to make hard decisions very quickly." On the screen, the simulated soldiers were using tactics that seemed wrong to Zethkar. They hid in schools and hospitals. They used civilians as shields. They destroyed bridges and roads to slow their enemies. This wasn't honorable warfare. This was something else. "Your military teaches soldiers to hide behind civilians?" Vexta growled. "We teach them to survive," Captain Park said calmly. "Honor doesn't help much when you're dead. And we teach them to win with the least possible casualties on both sides." She changed the simulation to show a different battle. This time, human soldiers were fighting strange creatures that didn't look human at all. "The simulation wars," Captain Park explained. "We create scenarios where humans fight imaginary aliens. It helps us prepare for situations we've never faced before." Zethkar studied the screen. The imaginary aliens looked somewhat like his own people. They carried advanced weapons and moved in organized formations. But the human soldiers were winning using strange tactics. "Your people have never fought real aliens," he said. "How do you know these tactics would work?" "We don't," Captain Park admitted. "But we've fought ourselves for thousands of years. We know how intelligent enemies think, how they adapt, how they try to surprise us. Alien minds might be different, but the principles of war are probably similar." She led them to another room where human cadets were practicing hand-to-hand combat. But this wasn't like the ritual fighting Zethkar knew. The humans were learning to fight dirty. They went for eyes, throats, and joints. They used improvised weapons like chairs and broken bottles. "This seems dishonorable," Vexta said, watching a small human woman defeat a much larger man by hitting him in a nerve cluster. "Honor is a luxury," Captain Park replied. "When someone is trying to kill you, all that matters is staying alive long enough to complete your mission." After lunch, Captain Park made an unexpected offer. "Commander Zethkar, would you like to test your soldiers against some of our cadets? Nothing serious, just a training exercise." Zethkar's 4 eyes lit up. Finally, a chance to show these humans what real warriors could do. "What kind of exercise?" he asked. "Urban warfare simulation. Your team tries to capture a building. Our team tries to stop you. We use laser weapons that register hits but don't actually hurt anyone." Vexta grinned, showing his sharp teeth. "How many of your cadets?" "The same number as your team. You brought 12 soldiers, so we'll use 12 cadets." Zethkar almost laughed. His Void Reapers were the most elite soldiers in the galaxy. These human children would learn a hard lesson about real military might. The exercise took place in a mock city built for training. The buildings were real, made of concrete and steel. Streets were filled with abandoned vehicles and debris. It looked exactly like a war zone. Zethkar's team was equipped with their standard battle armor and weapons. The armor could stop most bullets and deflect energy beams. Their weapons were designed to punch through heavy cover. They had shields, sensors, and communication gear that was the best in the galaxy. The human cadets wore simple cloth uniforms and carried basic rifles. No armor, no advanced equipment. Some of them looked like they were barely 18 years old. "This will be over quickly," Vexta said confidently. The exercise began. Zethkar's team advanced down the main street in perfect formation. They moved like a machine, covering each other and checking corners. Their sensors showed no immediate threats. Then the attacks began. The first explosion came from a building they had already cleared. Someone had hidden a bomb in the rubble and waited for them to pass. 2 of Zethkar's soldiers were marked as killed by the training computer. More explosions followed. The humans weren't fighting fair. They hid in sewers, in basement tunnels, inside walls. They appeared, fired a few shots, then vanished before the aliens could respond. "Where are they?" Vexta snarled into his radio. "Our sensors show nothing." But the attacks kept coming. A sniper on a rooftop eliminated another Vraxian soldier. A booby trap in a doorway caught 2 more. The humans seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Zethkar tried to adapt. He split his forces to cover more ground. Immediately, the humans attacked his smaller groups with overwhelming numbers. They moved through the city like ghosts, striking hard and fast before disappearing again. Within an hour, all 12 of Zethkar's soldiers were marked as casualties. The training computer declared the exercise over. The humans had won without losing a single person. Captain Park appeared from a building nearby, followed by her 12 cadets. They looked calm and relaxed, like they had just finished a routine drill. "Good exercise," she said cheerfully. "Your soldiers fought well. Very disciplined formation." Zethkar stared at her. "How did you do that?" "Our armor should have protected us. Our sensors should have detected you." "Your armor protects against direct attacks," one of the cadets explained. She was young, maybe 19, with blonde hair and blue eyes. "But it doesn't help much against explosives placed under your feet. And sensors work great in open space, but cities have too much interference." Another cadet, a thin boy with dark skin, added, "You fought like you were in a regular battle. We fought like we were trying to survive." Different mindset. Captain Park pulled up a replay of the exercise on a tablet computer. "Your soldiers are clearly experienced and brave. But they're used to fighting other soldiers who follow the same rules they do. We don't follow rules. We use whatever works." Zethkar watched the replay in stunned silence. His elite warriors had been completely outmaneuvered by human children who weren't even full soldiers yet. "This was just training," Vexta said weakly. In a real battle, we'd use real explosives," the blonde cadet said matter-of-factly. "And we wouldn't worry about being fair or honorable. We'd just try to kill you before you killed us." Captain Park's final comment as they left the academy stayed with Zethkar for hours afterward. "Commander, your soldiers fought like warriors. That's admirable. But we needed them to fight like survivors. There's a difference." That night aboard the Nexus Prime, Zethkar sat alone in his quarters. He had spent his entire career believing that the Void Reapers were unbeatable. Today, human children had proven him wrong, and they had done it while being polite and friendly the entire time. The defeat at the academy had shaken Zethkar badly. His soldiers were quiet during the evening meal. They had been beaten by human children using basic weapons and simple tactics. It made no sense. Admiral Chen noticed their mood when she arrived for the next day's meetings. "Commander, you seem troubled," she said kindly. "Is there something we can help you understand?" Zethkar struggled with how to ask his question. In Vraxian culture, admitting ignorance was a sign of weakness, but he needed to know. "Your young soldiers fought differently than we expected," he said carefully. "They didn't follow normal military patterns. How do you train them to think this way?" Admiral Chen smiled sadly. "They learn from our history, and from our veterans. Would you like to meet some of them?" She led the aliens to a large building in Washington, D.C. The sign outside read, Veterans Affairs Medical Center. Inside, the building was clean and quiet. Humans in white coats moved through the hallways, caring for people in wheelchairs and hospital beds. "This is where we treat our soldiers after they come home from war," Admiral Chen explained. "Some have physical injuries. Others have mental wounds that don't show on the outside." They met Dr. James Wright, a tall man with gray hair and gentle eyes. He wore a simple white coat and spoke in a soft voice. "I help soldiers deal with what they've seen in combat," he told the aliens. "War changes people, sometimes in ways that are hard to understand." Dr. Wright led them to a common room where several humans sat around tables. Some were playing cards. Others were talking quietly or reading books. Many had visible injuries, missing arms or legs, scars on their faces, eyes that didn't focus properly. "These are our veterans," Dr. Wright said, "men and women who served in various conflicts over the years." A woman in a wheelchair rolled over to greet them. She had short brown hair and warm brown eyes. Both of her legs were gone from the knees down, replaced by metal prosthetics. "I'm Sergeant First Class Maria Santos," she said, shaking hands with each alien. Her grip was firm and confident. "Lost these in the Amazon Basin campaign 3 years ago." Zethkar looked at her legs. The metal prosthetics were clearly advanced technology, but they looked like tools rather than weapons. "Do they work well?" he asked. "Better than the originals," Maria laughed. "These don't get tired and they're harder to break. I can run faster now than I could before." She stood up to demonstrate. The metal legs moved smoothly and silently. Maria walked, then jogged, then ran in place. The aliens could barely tell she wasn't using natural legs. The Amazon Basin campaign, Vexta said. Was that a major battle? Maria's expression grew serious. 2 years of jungle fighting. We were trying to stop 3 different groups from taking control of the water sources. Lots of booby traps, ambushes, chemical weapons. Not fun. How many enemy soldiers did you face? Zethkar asked. Hard to say. They didn't wear uniforms. Could be farmers during the day, fighters at night. Kids who looked 12 years old would throw grenades at your truck. Grandmothers would give you directions, then call in artillery strikes on your position. The aliens were horrified. In their wars, civilians stayed out of the fighting. Military targets were clearly marked. There were rules about who could fight and who couldn't. Children fought in your war? Vexta whispered. Children die in wars whether they fight or not, Maria said quietly. At least if they're fighting, they have a chance to survive. Another veteran joined their group. He was an older man with Asian features and calm eyes. His left arm was gone at the shoulder, and scars covered the left side of his face. Chief Petty Officer David Kim. He introduced himself. Navy Submarine Service, Pacific Depression conflict. What happened to your arm? Zethkar asked. Pressure explosion when our sub was hit by a depth charge, David said matter-of-factly. We were hunting enemy submarines in the deep ocean trenches. Very dark down there. Very quiet. You could hunt each other for weeks without making contact. How deep? Vexta asked. The Korthek were afraid of deep water. 6,000 meters sometimes. The pressure would crush you instantly if the hull cracked. But it was good hunting. Enemy subs couldn't use most of their sensors at that depth. Came down to who was smarter and who made fewer mistakes. David spoke about underwater warfare like it was a normal job. He described hunting. Other humans in the crushing darkness of the deep. Ocean with the same tone someone might use to discuss farming. Dr. Wright took the aliens aside while the veterans continued their conversations. You're wondering why they seem so calm about such terrible experiences, he said. Yes, Zethkar admitted. In our military, soldiers who survive major battles are honored and retired. These humans speak of multiple wars like they were routine. For many of them it was routine, Dr. Wright explained. Maria served in 4 different conflicts before she lost her legs. David was underwater for over 10 years, fighting in 3 separate naval wars. Colonel Rodriguez, who you met yesterday, has been in active combat for almost 20 years. The aliens couldn't comprehend it. Their own warriors rarely survived one major battle. The idea of fighting for decades seemed impossible. How do they stay mentally stable? Vexta asked. Many don't, Dr. Wright said sadly. That's why this facility exists. We help them process what they've experienced. War trauma is one of humanity's biggest medical challenges. He led them to his office where the walls were covered with charts and graphs. One chart caught Zethkar's attention. It showed human conflicts over the past 100 years. 347 separate wars in the last century, Dr. Wright said, following his gaze. Some lasted days. Others went on for decades. All of them left mental scars on the survivors. Why so many wars? Zethkar asked. Resources, territory, ideology, revenge. Humans are very good at finding reasons to fight each other. We've been doing it for thousands of years. Another chart showed something called acceptable casualty rates for different types of military operations. The numbers made Zethkar feel sick. Humans calculated how many of their own people would die in various missions, then proceeded with operations where the death rate was higher than total Vraxian military losses in their entire history. This says urban pacification operations have a 40% casualty rate, Vexta said, pointing at the chart. For conventional forces, Dr. Wright agreed. Special operations units can sometimes do better, but urban warfare is always expensive. Too many places for enemies to hide. Too many ways for things to go wrong. A knock on the door interrupted them. Colonel Rodriguez entered, carrying a cup of coffee in his metal hand. Admiral Chen asked me to check on you, he said to the aliens. How are you finding our medical facilities? Your people have fought in so many wars, Zethkar said. How do you keep going? Bull sat down and sipped his coffee thoughtfully. I guess we don't know how to quit. When humans see a problem, we try to fix it. When someone threatens us, we fight back. When we lose, we learn from our mistakes and try again. Don't you ever want to stop fighting? Every day, Bull said sadly. That's why places like this exist, to help us remember that peace is worth fighting for. Dr. Wright showed them more charts, suicide rates among veterans, divorce rates, addiction problems. Mental health statistics that painted a picture of a species traumatized by its own violence. We're very good at war, Dr. Wright said, but we're also very good at hurting ourselves in the process. Every human who serves in combat comes home changed. Some changes are good. They're stronger, more confident, better at solving problems. Other changes are harder to live with. As they prepared to leave, Zethkar asked one final question. Dr. Wright, why do your people keep fighting when the cost is so high? The doctor looked out the window at the city beyond. Millions of humans going about their daily lives in peace. Because the alternative is worse, he said simply. We've learned that running away from problems doesn't solve them. Sometimes you have to fight to protect the things you love. The trick is knowing when to stop. On the way back to Luna Station, Admiral Chen asked the aliens what they thought of the medical center. Your veterans seem very damaged, Vexta said. They are, Admiral Chen agreed, but they're also very dangerous. They've seen the worst that intelligent beings can do to each other, and they've survived it. That changes how you think about everything. Zethkar was beginning to understand. Human military strength didn't come from superior technology or natural warrior instincts. It came from a willingness to endure terrible suffering and keep fighting anyway. That night he found himself wondering what his own soldiers would be like after a few decades of human-style warfare. The thought made him shudder. On the fourth day of their visit, Admiral Chen's mood changed. She was still polite and friendly, but there was something more serious in her eyes. Commander Zethkar, she said during breakfast, I think it's time you understood what humanity is really capable of. What you've seen so far is us at peace. She led the aliens to a place called NORAD, deep inside a mountain in Colorado. The entrance was a massive steel door that looked like it could survive a nuclear explosion. Inside, the tunnels went deep into solid rock. This is our primary military command center, Admiral Chen explained as they walked through corridors lined with screens and computer terminals. From here we can coordinate military operations anywhere on Earth or in near space. The main command room was enormous. Hundreds of humans sat at control stations, watching screens that showed the entire planet. Other screens showed space around Earth, tracking every ship and satellite in the solar system. A tall woman with dark skin and general stars on her uniform approached them. She moved with the controlled grace of someone who had spent years in combat. This is General Patricia Okafor, Admiral Chen said. She's our Strategic Command Director. General Okafor shook hands with the aliens. Her grip was strong and her eyes were sharp and calculating. Welcome to NORAD, she said. Admiral Chen tells me you'd like to understand our defensive capabilities. She led them to a wall covered with screens showing numbers and charts. At first, the aliens thought they were looking at inventory lists. Then they realized what the numbers represented. These are our nuclear weapons, General Okafor said calmly. We maintain approximately 12,000 warheads in various states of readiness. Zethkar stared at the numbers. 12,000 nuclear weapons? The entire Vraxian Empire had only 3 nuclear devices, and those were considered planet-killing superweapons. 12,000? Vexta whispered. That's down from our peak of 60,000 during the Cold War, General Okafor said. We've been reducing our arsenal as part of various treaty agreements. She touched a control, and the screen changed to show delivery systems. Missiles hidden in underground silos, nuclear submarines lurking in the deep ocean, bomber aircraft that could fly around the world without landing. Each submarine carries enough firepower to destroy a continent, General Okafor explained. We have 14 of them on patrol at any given time. The land-based missiles can reach any target on Earth within 30 minutes. Zethkar felt dizzy. This small, peaceful planet had enough nuclear weapons to sterilize half the galaxy. Why so many? He asked. Deterrence, General Okafor said. During our Cold War, 2 human nations pointed these weapons at each other for 50 years. Neither side dared attack because they knew the other side would respond with equal force. It was a balance of terror that kept the peace. Admiral Chen pulled up historical footage on another screen. The aliens watched in horror as cities disappeared in balls of nuclear fire. Millions of people killed in seconds. Entire regions turned into radioactive wastelands. These are from our Second World War, Admiral Chen said quietly. The first time nuclear weapons were used in combat. 2 cities destroyed, about 300,000 people killed. It convinced our leaders to surrender rather than fight a longer war. You used nuclear weapons against your own species? Vexta asked in shock. Different nations, but yes, same species. Admiral Chen's voice was sad. It was a terrible decision, but it probably saved millions of lives by ending the war quickly. General Okafor took them deeper into the mountain, to storage areas filled with deactivated weapons. The aliens saw bombs that could level mountains, missiles designed to crack continents, and chemical weapons that could poison entire ecosystems. These are all banned now, General Okafor explained. Too dangerous to use, too dangerous to destroy quickly. So we store them here until our scientists figure out safe disposal methods. In one vault, they saw biological weapons that could target specific genetic markers, diseases designed to kill only certain types of humans while leaving others untouched. We developed these during the genetic wars, Admiral Chen said, when different human factions tried to remake themselves into separate species. Very dark period in our history. You fought wars based on genetics? Zethkar asked. Skin color, eye shape, blood type. Humans can fight about almost anything if they're scared enough or angry enough. They visited a research facility where human scientists were studying captured alien technology, not weapons. The humans had no desire to copy alien military equipment. Instead, they were analyzing coalition communication systems, shield generators, and medical devices. Your technology is very impressive, one scientist told Zethkar, much more elegant than our solutions. But it's designed for a peaceful civilization. It wouldn't survive the kind of warfare humans have developed. The scientists showed them test results. Coalition personal armor could stop energy weapons and projectiles, but it failed completely against sonic attacks, chemical agents, and electromagnetic pulse weapons. Alien shields worked well against directed energy, but a simple nuclear explosion would overload them instantly. Your equipment is designed to fight other species like yourselves, the scientist explained. Honor-based combat with rules and limitations. Human military technology is designed for total war with no rules at all. That evening, General Okafor gave them a final briefing in a secure conference room. The walls were lined with maps showing human military capabilities around the globe. What you've seen today represents our defensive posture, she said. These weapons exist to protect Earth and discourage aggression. But if necessary, we could adapt them for offensive operations. She showed them deployment scenarios, how human forces could capture and hold alien worlds, how Earth's nuclear arsenal could sterilize entire star systems, how human military tactics could be scaled up for galactic warfare. The key is logistics, General Okafor explained. Most alien species, including your coalition, spread their forces across many worlds. That makes them vulnerable to concentrated attacks. Humans learn to mass overwhelming force at critical points, achieve quick victories, then move to the next target. The presentation was terrifying in its calm efficiency. General Okafor spoke about conquering the galaxy like she was planning a training exercise. Of course, we have no intention of pursuing galactic conquest, Admiral Chen added quickly. These are purely theoretical studies. We're much more interested in peaceful cooperation. But you could do it, Zethkar said. It wasn't a question. Probably, General Okafor admitted. Human military doctrine is based on fighting enemies who are just as smart, just as desperate, and just as ruthless as we are. Fighting aliens who follow honor codes and traditional battle tactics would be easier. As they prepared to leave, Zethkar asked the question that had been bothering him all day. General, why did humans develop such devastating weapons? Why become so good at destroying things? General Okafor looked out a window at the peaceful mountains surrounding the base. Because our enemies were human too, she said simply. Every weapon we built, they could build. Every tactic we developed, they could copy. Every advantage we gained, they could counter. We had to become better at killing than anyone else, or we wouldn't have survived our own species. And now we use that knowledge to prevent wars instead of fighting them. When potential enemies see what we're capable of, they usually choose negotiation over conflict. It's much safer for everyone. On the flight back to Luna Station, the aliens were silent. They had seen enough military power to conquer the known galaxy. Weapons that could destroy planets, tactics that could break any defense, technology that made coalition forces look primitive, and all of it was controlled by species that preferred to grow gardens and write poetry. Admiral, Zethkar said finally, why are you showing us this? Aren't you afraid we'll report your capabilities to the coalition? Admiral Chen smiled. Commander, we want you to report exactly what you've seen. We want the galaxy to know that Earth prefers peace, but we're very good at war. It's the best way to make sure we never have to prove it. Vexta stared out the window at Earth spinning slowly below them. Billions of humans going about their daily lives completely unaware that their species possessed the power to reshape the galaxy. "Your people scare me," he said honestly. "Good," Admiral Chen replied. "Fear can be the beginning of wisdom, and wisdom is what keeps everyone alive." That night, Zethkar began writing his report to Coalition Command. How do you explain to galactic civilization that humanity had become the deadliest species in known space by spending thousands of years trying to kill themselves? And more importantly, how do you convince them that leaving these humans alone was the smartest military decision they would ever make? The final day of the Coalition delegation's visit took place at the United Nations building in New York City. Zethkar and his team sat in a large conference room overlooking the East River. Human diplomats from dozens of nations filled the room, but Admiral Chen led the discussion. "Commander Zethkar," she began, "you came here to evaluate Earth's readiness to join galactic civilization. What is your assessment?" Zethkar had spent hours preparing for this moment. His report would shape how the Coalition interacted with humanity for generations to come. He chose his words carefully. "Admiral Chen, my team and I have learned much during our visit. Humanity possesses military capabilities that exceed anything in our databases. Your people have survived conflicts that would have destroyed most species. You have weapons that could threaten entire star systems." Murmurs went around the room. Some humans looked proud. Others seemed uncomfortable with the description. "However," Zethkar continued, "you have also shown remarkable restraint. Despite possessing overwhelming military power, you choose peace. You build rather than destroy. You explore rather than conquer. This combination is unprecedented." Admiral Chen nodded. "What are your recommendations to Coalition Command?" Zethkar looked at Vexta, who gave a small nod of agreement. "I will recommend that the Coalition formally invite humanity to join as an independent member species," Zethkar said, "with full territorial sovereignty and defensive guarantees." "And militarily?" Admiral Chen asked. "I will recommend that Coalition military forces avoid any hostile action toward human space," Zethkar said bluntly. "Your defensive capabilities make any attack extremely costly. Your offensive capabilities make retaliation devastating. Any rational military commander would seek alliance rather than conflict." The room fell silent. Zethkar realized he had just admitted that the galaxy's most powerful military force was afraid of humanity. General Okafor leaned forward. "Commander, the Coalition military outnumbers human forces by millions to one. Surely you're not suggesting we could fight the entire galaxy?" "General, numbers don't matter if your enemy can destroy planets," Zethkar replied. "But more importantly, human military thinking is fundamentally different from ours. We fight to achieve glory and expand territory. You fight to survive and protect what you love. History shows that desperate defenders usually defeat confident attackers." Colonel Rodriguez spoke up from the back of the room. "Commander, what would you do if the Coalition ordered an attack on Earth?" Zethkar thought for a long moment. "Respectfully, Colonel, I would resign my commission and recommend that my soldiers do the same. Fighting humans would be like fighting ourselves, except you've had more practice." Admiral Chen smiled. "That's very diplomatic, Commander. But I believe you came here with a different purpose in mind. Didn't Coalition Command want you to recruit human military advisors?" Zethkar felt embarrassed. The Coalition had indeed hoped to hire human military experts to improve their own forces. After what he had seen, the idea seemed almost insulting. "Yes," he admitted. "We had hoped to learn from your tactical expertise. Perhaps even recruit some of your veterans to train our soldiers. And now I understand that human military excellence comes from uniquely human experiences. You can't teach someone to think like a human soldier without first teaching them to think like a human. And that would require them to understand human history, human psychology, human desperation. It would take generations." Dr. Wright, who had been quiet throughout the meeting, finally spoke. "Commander, there's something you should understand about human military culture. Our greatest weapon isn't our technology or our tactics. It's our willingness to sacrifice everything for causes we believe in. Every human soldier knows that they might die for their mission, and most of them have already accepted that possibility before they ever see combat." "Your soldiers expect to die?" Vexta asked. "Our soldiers expect to complete their missions," Colonel Rodriguez corrected. "Whether they survive or not is secondary. That's a very different mindset from cultures where individual warriors are valued above mission success." Admiral Chen pulled up a holographic display showing human military statistics. The numbers told a story that made the aliens uncomfortable. In our global unity war, human forces suffered 60% casualties, she said. But they completed 95% of their assigned missions. In the Pacific Depression conflict, submarine crews had a 40% survival rate. But they sank 80% of enemy shipping. You send people on missions where most of them will die? Sethkar asked in horror. We send people on missions that need to be completed, Admiral Chen said firmly, and we're very careful to make sure those missions are worth the cost. But when the stakes are high enough, humans will pay any price. The formal negotiations continued for several hours. Humanity would join the coalition as an independent member with full rights and protections. They would share non-military technology and participate in joint exploration missions, but they would maintain their own military forces and keep their weapons technology secret. There is one thing the coalition could use human help with, Admiral Chen said as the meetings wound down. Peacekeeping operations. Situations where different species need to stop fighting and learn to coexist. You want to send human soldiers to maintain peace? Vexta asked. Not soldiers, Dr. Wright said. Peacekeepers. People who understand the psychology of conflict and know how to prevent wars before they start. Humans who have seen what happens when intelligent species fight without restraint. Admiral Chen explained humanity's proposal. Instead of military advisors, Earth would provide conflict resolution specialists. Psychologists who understood warfare trauma, negotiators who had experience ending seemingly hopeless conflicts. Our veterans know the true cost of war, she said. They can help other species find alternatives to violence. Sometimes the best way to prevent a fight is to show people what happens when fights go too far. 6 months later, Sethkar stood on the bridge of his ship, reading the latest reports from Coalition Command. His assessment of humanity had been accepted with minimal changes. Earth was now a full coalition member, with their territory marked as a no-conflict zone by unanimous vote. More importantly, human peacekeeping teams were already showing remarkable success. On Zirion Prime, where Sethkar had once fought his greatest battle, human negotiators had ended a civil war that had raged for decades. On the Korthik frontier, human psychologists were helping former enemies learn to live together. The humans accomplished these things not through military force, but through understanding. They knew how wars started, how they escalated, and how they could be stopped before they became unstoppable. Vexta approached with a message pad. Commander, we've received a request from Coalition Command. They want human observers for the Rigel System peacekeeping mission. Sethkar smiled. The Rigel System had been in conflict for over a century. Traditional Coalition peacekeeping had failed repeatedly. Now they were asking for help from the species they had once dismissed as weak. Approve the request, he said, and send our recommendation that future peacekeeping operations include human advisors by default. Yes, sir. Commander, may I ask you something? Of course. Do you think we made the right choice with humanity? Sethkar looked out at the stars. Somewhere among them, humans were exploring new worlds, building new colonies, and sharing their knowledge with alien species. They had chosen to use their devastating military capabilities to preserve peace rather than expand their territory. Vexta, I think we made the only choice that made sense. Humans could have conquered the galaxy if they wanted to. Instead, they chose to join it. That shows a level of wisdom that most species, including ours, have never achieved. And if they change their minds, if they decide they want to rule instead of cooperate? Sethkar thought about Admiral Chen, Colonel Rodriguez, Dr. Wright, and all the other humans he had met. People who had seen the worst that intelligent beings could do to each other, and had chosen to build something better. Then we'll deal with that when it happens, he said. But I don't think we'll have to. Humans have already fought the war they needed to win, the war against their own violent nature. Everything else is just details. As his ship jumped to hyperspace, Sethkar began composing a personal message to Admiral Chen. The Coalition had many questions about human technology, human psychology, and human history. But he had only one request. He wanted to learn how a species could become the deadliest force in the galaxy, and then choose not to use that power. That seemed like wisdom worth understanding. In her reply, Admiral Chen would write something that Sethkar would remember for the rest of his life. Commander, we learned that the strongest weapons are the ones you never have to fire. The most successful battles are the ones you never have to fight, and the greatest victory is teaching your enemies to become your friends. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy not as conquerors, but as teachers of a lesson the universe desperately needed to learn.